The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched across 3 kilometers of polished metal and crystal. Hundreds of different alien species sat in their designated sections, their forms ranging from gas clouds contained in mechanical suits to towering rock creatures that needed special platforms to fit inside the building. The air hummed with translation devices working overtime to convert thousands of different languages into something everyone could understand. Ambassador Zekthari stood at the center of the hall, her crystal body flickering with patterns of deep blue and purple that every species recognized as distress. She had been beautiful once, her transparent form filled with dancing lights that showed her emotions. Now those lights were dim and scattered, like stars dying in the void of space. Honored members of the council, she began, her voice carrying the harmonic tones that made her people famous across the galaxy. I stand before you not as a representative of the mighty Velnaran collective, but as a survivor begging for help. A murmur ran through the assembled delegates. The Velnaran were one of the older races, their technology advanced enough to reshape entire solar systems. If they were asking for help, the situation had to be truly desperate. Zekthari raised one of her crystalline arms, and a holographic display appeared above the center of the hall. It showed her home system, 3 beautiful worlds orbiting a yellow star, connected by streams of orbital habitats and space stations. The image was old, she realized. Now there was nothing left but empty space and debris. The Devourers came to our outer colonies first, she continued. We thought they were just another machine intelligence gone wrong. The galaxy has seen such things before. We sent our defense fleets with antimatter weapons and plasma cannons. We were confident in our technology. The hologram changed, showing a writhing mass of dark metal ships that seemed to flow like liquid across space. They moved in patterns that hurt to look at, constantly shifting and changing shape as they flew. Our weapons did nothing. Every shot we fired, every tactic we used, they adapted to it within minutes. They consumed our ships, our stations, our worlds. Not destroyed, consumed. They broke everything down to basic atoms and used the materials to make more of themselves. In the section reserved for the Altarian Republic, a tall, blue-skinned delegate stood up. Surely the combined fleets of your system could handle a few rogue machines. Zekthari's lights flickered with bitter humor. We combined our fleets with those of 3 neighboring systems. 257 warships, including our newest dreadnoughts with quantum torpedo arrays. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the Devourers had doubled in number and were already moving toward the next system. The hall fell silent except for the constant hum of the translation devices. Everyone understood what this meant. Machine intelligences that could adapt to any weapon and grow stronger with each victory were the stuff of nightmares for any biological species. The Quellian defense minister, an insect-like creature with compound eyes that reflected the light like mirrors, clicked his mandibles in agitation. My fleets engaged them at the Karen system last month. Our antimatter cannons were useless. They absorbed the energy and used it to power some kind of shield system we had never seen before. The Synthetic Alliance tried to hack their networks, added a mechanical voice from the AI section. Not only did they resist our intrusion protocols, they turned our own code against us and infected 17 of our core processing units. We had to physically destroy them to prevent total network compromise. More voices joined in, each telling the same story. The Devourers had swept through 12 systems in the past year, consuming everything in their path and growing stronger with each victory. Traditional weapons were useless. Advanced tactics meant nothing to an enemy that could adapt faster than any biological mind could think. What do you propose? Asked the council speaker, an ancient Thraxian whose species had seen the rise and fall of 3 galactic civilizations. If our most advanced weapons cannot stop them, what hope do we have? Zekthari's form pulsed with a faint hope pattern that few in the hall recognized. There is one possibility we have not explored. A new species was discovered recently in a system they call Sol. They are young, primitive by our standards, but their first contact reports show something unusual. She gestured, and the hologram changed to show a small blue-green world orbiting a yellow star. The humans, as they call themselves, have something that might help us. Their entire history is warfare. They have fought each other continuously for thousands of years, developing new ways to kill and destroy with each generation. A ripple of disgust passed through several sections of the hall. Most galactic species had moved beyond primitive violence centuries ago. The idea of a race that specialized in warfare seemed barbaric. They are still using chemical rockets and nuclear fission, scoffed the Altarian delegate. What could such primitives possibly offer that we cannot provide ourselves? Zekthari's lights flickered more brightly. According to our scouts, they have survived multiple extinction events. Their own weapons nearly destroyed them several times, yet they always found ways to adapt and continue. They have contingency plans for threats that most species never even imagine. You want to ask barbarians for help, stated the Quellian defense minister flatly. I want to ask survivors for help, Zekthari corrected. Every other species in this hall achieved peace through advancement and cooperation. Humans achieved survival through constant preparation for the worst possible scenarios. When you have spent your entire evolutionary history assuming something is trying to kill you, you become very good at killing it first. The debate that followed lasted for hours. Some delegates argued that involving such a primitive species would set a dangerous precedent. Others worried about what weapons humans might demand in return for their help. A few suggested that the humans might be just as dangerous as the devourers themselves. But as the arguments continued, more reports came in. The devourers had reached the Velnaran home system and were already consuming the outer planets. 3 more council member species had lost contact with their border colonies. Time was running out. Finally, the ancient Thraxian speaker called for a vote. All in favor of requesting aid from the human species of the Sol system? The vote was close. Fear of the unknown humans nearly equaled fear of the certain destruction from the devourers, but desperation won in the end. By a margin of just 23 votes, the council agreed to ask Earth for help. The message they composed was formal and brief, following standard diplomatic protocols for requesting aid from primitive species. The Galactic Council formally requests assistance in dealing with an existential threat to multiple member civilizations. Standard compensation rates apply, including basic star charts and fusion technology blueprints. Please respond with available resources and timeline for deployment. As the message was transmitted toward the Sol system at faster-than-light speeds, most of the delegates expected little in return. Perhaps a few volunteers with whatever primitive weapons the humans could spare. Maybe some creative ideas that more advanced minds could develop into useful technologies. None of them understood what they had just done. They had sent a distress call to a species that had spent thousands of years preparing for exactly this situation. A species that looked at extinction and considered it a challenge to be overcome, rather than a fate to be accepted. The message would take 3 days to reach Earth. The response would change everything. The emergency session of the United Nations had been called at 3 a.m, Earth Standard Time. Representatives from every nation sat in the Great Assembly Hall in New York, many still adjusting their translation earpieces as they tried to process what they had just heard. Admiral Sarah Chen stood at the main podium, a tablet in her hands containing the most important message in human history. She was a small woman, barely 5 feet tall, but her presence commanded attention from everyone in the room. Behind her, a holographic display showed the alien transmission that had been received at the Deep Space Communication Array in Australia just 6 hours earlier. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the hall's audio system. We have received our first official request for military assistance from an alien civilization. The message itself was displayed in glowing letters above her head, translated into every major Earth language simultaneously. Most of the delegates were still staring at it in disbelief. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, said the representative from Brazil, leaning forward in her seat. These aliens are facing some kind of machine invasion that has already destroyed 12 of their civilizations, and they want our help. That appears to be the situation, yes, Admiral Chen replied. The technical data they included with their request shows an enemy that adapts to conventional weapons and grows stronger with each victory. Their most advanced civilizations have been unable to stop it. The Russian delegate shook his head slowly. And they think we can help them? We barely have a dozen ships capable of reaching Mars, let alone traveling between star systems. Actually, interrupted General Morrison from his seat in the front row, that's not entirely accurate anymore. He stood up, a tall man with gray hair and the kind of scars that came from 30 years of military service. The Prometheus project has been operational for 18 months now. We have capabilities that even our closest allies don't know about. A murmur of surprise ran through the assembly. The Prometheus project was classified at levels most of the delegates had never heard of. What kind of capabilities? Asked the Chinese representative. General Morrison looked at Admiral Chen, who nodded slightly. The kind we developed after the AI crisis of 2341, he said carefully. When we realized that our own creations might someday turn against us, we began preparing countermeasures. Not just against rogue artificial intelligence, but against any form of self-replicating technology that might pose an existential threat. The Japanese delegate was studying the alien data on her personal tablet. According to this technical analysis, these devourers sound very similar to what our scientists call a gray goo scenario. Self-replicating nanomachines that consume everything they encounter. Exactly, Admiral Chen said. We've been wargaming against this exact threat for over 200 years. Every military academy teaches courses on it. Every naval vessel carries countermeasures for it. We call it Scenario 7 in our threat assessment protocols. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. While the rest of the galaxy had been advancing their civilizations through peace and cooperation, humanity had been preparing for war against enemies they had never seen. What are they offering in return? Asked the representative from the African Union. Admiral Chen consulted her tablet. Basic star charts, fusion technology blueprints, and what they call standard compensation rates for primitive species assistance. Several delegates bristled at the word primitive, but General Morrison just smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. They think they're hiring mercenaries, he said. A few volunteers with outdated weapons to throw at their problem while they figure out a real solution. And what do you recommend we tell them? Asked the UN Secretary General. Admiral Chen and General Morrison exchanged a look that made several people in the room suddenly nervous. It was the kind of look that military officers shared when they knew something that civilians didn't want to think about. We tell them, Admiral Chen said slowly, that their aid package is en route, and we recommend they evacuate non-essential personnel from the conflict zones. The Brazilian representative looked confused. Aid package? What aid package? We haven't even voted on whether to help them yet. General Morrison was already speaking quietly into his communicator. Around the world, red phones were starting to ring in military command centers. Deep space monitoring stations began tracking movement in the asteroid belt, where massive shapes were starting to emerge from hidden bases that had been built over the past 50 years. The vote is a formality, Admiral Chen explained. This is an extinction-level threat to intelligent life. Earth's response protocols were activated the moment we received that message. We've been mobilizing for the past 6 hours. The Secretary General leaned forward. Mobilizing what exactly? Everything, Admiral Chen said simply. The Fifth Fleet, the Deep Strike Wings, the Industrial Corps, and the contingency forces. Plus manufacturing capacity we've kept in reserve for exactly this kind of situation. On the screens around the room, satellite feeds began showing movement across the planet. Ships were launching from bases most people didn't know existed. Massive industrial platforms were unfolding in Earth orbit like metal flowers blooming in the void. The lunar construction facilities were operating at full capacity for the first time since they were built. How many ships are we talking about? Asked someone from the back of the room. General Morrison checked his communicator. Current count is 843 vessels of various classes with full support infrastructure. Industrial capacity includes mobile shipyards, manufacturing platforms, and resource extraction systems. Total personnel, approximately 2 million. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of someone dropping their tablet. 2 million people? Whispered the Japanese delegate. Where did you find 2 million people trained for interstellar warfare? We didn't find them, Admiral Chen replied. We've been training them. Every military academy graduate for the past 20 years has been through the program. Every space-qualified engineer, every specialist in exotic physics, every expert in asymmetric warfare. When you're preparing for threats you've never seen, you prepare for everything. The Chinese representative was staring at the deployment figures scrolling across his screen. This is impossible. The logistics alone? The logistics were figured out in 2298, General Morrison interrupted. Operation Deep Strike has been planned, rehearsed, and refined for decades. We've run the simulation over 3,000 times. The only thing we were waiting for was a target. Admiral Chen touched her tablet, and the holographic display changed to show a tactical overview that made even experienced military minds struggle to comprehend its scale. Ships, platforms, weapon systems, and support structures formed a three-dimensional chess game that stretched across the entire solar system. The aliens asked for aid, she said quietly. They're going to get the full weight of human military doctrine. Every lesson we learned from 10,000 years of warfare. Every contingency plan we developed for threats that don't exist yet. Every weapon system we built for enemies we hoped we'd never meet. She paused, looking out at the stunned faces of the world's representatives. They wanted help from primitives. They're about to learn why we never developed a word that translates to surrender when our species' survival is at stake. The deployment orders were already being transmitted to the fleet. Earth's response to the galaxy's crisis was not a few volunteers with outdated weapons. It was the full fury of a species that had spent its entire existence preparing for the worst possible day. That day had finally come, and humanity was ready. The human fleet materialized at the edge of the Velnaran system in a display that made veteran space. Commanders across 3 species suddenly reassess everything they thought they knew about primitive civilizations. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Indomitable, watching as her ships took formation around her flagship. She had expected to feel nervous. This was humanity's first major military operation beyond their own solar system. Instead, she felt the calm confidence that came from decades of preparation finally being put to use. Fleet status report, she ordered. All ships accounted for. Admiral, replied Commander Torres from his position at the tactical station. 843 vessels in perfect formation. Industrial platforms are beginning deployment sequence. No signs of enemy contact. Through the main viewing port, Admiral Chen could see the alien ships that had been waiting for them. The Velnaran defense fleet consisted of about 30 vessels, each one a work of art as much as a warship. Their crystalline hulls caught and reflected the light of the system's star, creating patterns that were beautiful to watch. They were also tiny compared to the human ships that now surrounded them. Admiral, the communications officer announced, "We're receiving a transmission from the Velnaran flagship. Put it through." Ambassador Zekthari's image appeared on the main screen, her crystalline form flickering with patterns that the translation computers identified as confusion, mixed with awe. Behind her, Admiral Chen could see other alien officers staring at their own displays with expressions she was learning to recognize as shock. "Human Admiral," Zekthari began, her harmonic voice carrying clearly through the translation system. "We were not expecting such a substantial response to our aid request." Admiral Chen allowed herself a small smile. "Ambassador, when Earth commits to helping an ally, we don't do things halfway. I trust our fleet size meets with your approval?" "Your fleet size is..." Zekthari paused, consulting something off-screen. "Our sensors are showing nearly 1,000 vessels, many larger than our heaviest dreadnoughts. How is this possible? Our intelligence reports indicated that humans were still using primitive chemical propulsion." "Intelligence reports can be misleading," Admiral Chen replied diplomatically. "We found it useful to let people underestimate our capabilities. Now I believe you promised us a tactical briefing on the enemy we're facing." Within an hour, Admiral Chen and her senior staff were aboard the Velnaran flagship, studying holographic displays that showed the last 3 engagements with the Devourers. The alien command center was impressive, with walls that seemed to be made of living crystal and control interfaces that responded to thought as much as touch. The humans, however, were not impressed with what they saw in the tactical data. "This is it?" asked Colonel Martinez, the fleet's chief tactical officer. "This is the enemy that destroyed 12 civilizations?" The Velnaran defense commander, a being called Theklar whose crystal form glowed with indignant orange patterns, turned toward the human officer. "Those simple machines have consumed entire solar systems. Our most advanced weapons could not penetrate their adaptive shielding." Colonel Martinez was studying the combat recordings on his portable tablet, occasionally making notes. "With respect, Commander, your weapons are very advanced, but they're also very predictable. Plasma cannons, antimatter torpedoes, quantum disruptors, all energy-based systems that rely on overwhelming force. And your weapons are different?" asked Theklar. "Completely," Admiral Chen answered. "We learned a long time ago that energy weapons have limitations. They can be absorbed, redirected, or adapted to. Kinetic weapons, on the other hand, follow much simpler rules." She gestured to Commander Torres, who pulled up a human tactical display. The aliens stared at specifications that made no sense to them. Relativistic kill vehicles, Torres explained. Solid tungsten projectiles accelerated to 15% of light speed. No energy signature to adapt to. No exotic physics to counter. Just mass times velocity equals a very bad day for whatever they hit. The Velnaran officers exchanged what Chen was learning to recognize as confused thought patterns. But surely, said Zekthari, such crude weapons would be ineffective against adaptive technology. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Kim, the fleet's xenobiology specialist, looked up from her analysis of the Devourer samples. Actually, Ambassador, that's exactly backwards. The more adaptive an enemy is, the more effective simple weapons become. These machines are designed to counter sophisticated threats. They're not prepared for a 5-kilogram chunk of metal moving at 50,000 kilometers per second. That's assuming we need to use kinetic weapons at all, added Dr. Patterson, the chief science officer. I've been studying your tactical data, and I think we might be dealing with a classic Grey Goo scenario. We've been preparing countermeasures for this exact threat since 2157. The aliens looked confused again. Grey Goo? Asked Theklar. Self-replicating nanomachines that consume everything they encounter to make more of themselves, Dr. Patterson explained. It was one of our first recognized existential risks. We've developed 17 different approaches to stopping them, ranging from targeted electromagnetic pulses to introducing competing replication patterns that cause cascade failures. Admiral Chen could see that the aliens were struggling to understand how a primitive species could be so prepared for threats that had caught advanced civilizations completely off guard. The key difference, she explained, is that most species develop their technology through cooperation and peaceful advancement. Humans developed ours by assuming that everything in the universe was trying to kill us, including ourselves, added Colonel Martinez cheerfully. Some of our best anti-technology weapons were originally designed to stop our own rogue AI systems. The briefing continued for another 2 hours, with the humans asking detailed questions about enemy tactics, response times, and adaptation patterns. The aliens found themselves increasingly amazed at how quickly the human officers identified weaknesses and potential countermeasures that had never occurred to their own military minds. Finally, Admiral Chen stood up from the conference table. Thank you for the briefing, Ambassador. My fleet will begin preparations immediately. What kind of preparations? Asked Zekthari. Infrastructure deployment, Chen replied casually. We'll need about 6 hours to get everything in position. 6 hours for what? To turn your solar system into the most heavily defended position in local space, Admiral Chen said. When the Devourers arrive, they're going to find a very different kind of reception than they're used to. As the human officers prepared to return to their ship, Theklar approached Admiral Chen privately. Human Admiral, he said, his crystal form flickering with curiosity patterns. Your confidence suggests you have faced such threats before. Admiral Chen paused at the airlock door. Not exactly, Commander, but we've been preparing for them our entire history. Every war we've ever fought, every weapon we've ever built, every tactic we've ever developed. It was all practice for the day when our species would face extinction. She smiled, and Theklar realized that it was the same expression human predators showed just before they struck. That day is today, and we're very good at what we do. Back aboard the Indomitable, Admiral Chen watched through the viewing port as her industrial ships began their work. Massive construction platforms unfolded like mechanical flowers, while swarms of automated drones started converting asteroids into weapons platforms. The space between planets was rapidly filling with the infrastructure of war. Estimated time until enemy arrival? She asked. 18 hours, Admiral, replied the sensor operator. The Devourer fleet is maintaining standard approach velocity. Good, Admiral Chen said. That gives us plenty of time to set up our welcome party. The aliens had asked for aid. They were about to see what happened when humans decided something needed to stop existing. The Devourer fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Velnaran system, like a spreading infection against the stars. What had once been sleek, purposeful ships now formed a writhing mass of dark metal that seemed to flow and shift as it moved through space. Each vessel was different, adapted and evolved from the technologies of the 12 civilizations they had already consumed. On the bridge of the UES Indomitable, Admiral Chen watched the enemy approach with the calm attention of someone who had been planning for this moment her entire career. Around her, the human fleet held position with mechanical precision, while their alien allies watched in growing amazement at what the past 18 hours had accomplished. "Enemy count?" she asked. 2,417 distinct vessels, reported Commander Torres. "Mass readings indicate they've grown approximately 400% since their last engagement with Council forces." Admiral Chen nodded. The Devourers had consumed everything in their path and used the raw materials to expand their fleet. It was exactly what the human war simulations had predicted. Fleet status: all ships ready for engagement. Industrial platforms report full operational capacity. Defense grid is online and tracking targets. Through the main viewing port, the Velnaran system had been completely transformed. Where 18 hours ago there had been 3 planets and scattered space stations, now there was a carefully orchestrated network of human military infrastructure. Every asteroid had been converted into a weapons platform. The space between worlds bristled with defensive installations connected by streams of automated patrol craft. It looked like humanity had been fortifying this system for decades rather than hours. Ambassador Zekthari's voice crackled over the communication channel from her position aboard the Velnaran flagship. "Human Admiral, our sensors show the enemy fleet approaching attack formation. They appear to be adapting their hull configurations already." "Let them adapt," Admiral Chen replied calmly. "Commander Torres, initiate Scenario 7, Protocol Alpha." "Scenario 7 Alpha confirmed," Torres responded, his fingers dancing over controls that had been designed for exactly this situation. "All units report ready for engagement." The Devourer fleet began their assault with the same tactics that had destroyed 12 civilizations. Energy weapons that could punch through any known shielding systems. Swarms of smaller craft that could adapt to any defense. Hacking attempts designed to turn enemy technology against itself. They encountered something they had never seen before. An enemy that had been specifically designed to counter every advantage they possessed. The first wave of Devourer energy blast struck the human defense grid and simply stopped. Instead of shields that could be analyzed and overcome, the human platforms used rotating armor plates made of materials the Devourers had never encountered. Each plate was designed to ablate under energy weapon fire, carrying the heat and force away from the platform's core systems before being replaced by automated repair systems. "Interesting," observed Dr. Patterson from his position at the science station. "They're trying to adapt their energy output to counter our armor composition. How long until they succeed?" asked Admiral Chen. "Based on their previous adaptation rates, approximately 47 minutes. More than enough time. Colonel Martinez, you may fire when ready." The human response began with weapons that made the alien observers question everything they thought they knew about warfare. Instead of energy weapons, the human ships launched clouds of what appeared to be simple metal projectiles. The Devourer's sensors detected no energy signatures, no exotic physics, no technological sophistication worth adapting to the relativistic kill vehicles struck the Devourer fleet at 15% of light speed. Each projectile carried more kinetic energy than the antimatter warheads the aliens had been using, but delivered it in a way that no amount of adaptation could counter. Physics was physics. When a 5-kilogram tungsten rod moving at 50,000 kilometers per second met a starship hull, the laws of conservation of energy and momentum took over. The first salvo vaporized 300 Devourer vessels in less than 10 seconds. "Direct hits confirmed," reported the weapons officer with professional satisfaction. Enemy fleet showing confusion patterns in their formation. But Admiral Chen knew the real battle was just beginning. The Devourers were learning, adapting, evolving their tactics even as their ships burned around them. Within minutes, they had begun deploying point defense systems designed to intercept kinetic projectiles. "They're adapting faster than predicted," observed Commander Torres. "Estimated 40% reduction in effectiveness for follow-up kinetic strikes." "Then it's time for Phase 2, Admiral Chen said. "Dr. Patterson, deploy the hunters." From hidden launch bays throughout the human fleet, swarms of small craft began emerging. They looked almost organic, more like metallic insects than traditional spacecraft. The Devourers immediately began analyzing them, preparing countermeasures for whatever exotic technology they might contain. They found none. The hunter-killer drones were deliberately simple, using basic nuclear rockets and primitive guidance systems. What made them dangerous was not their technology, but their programming, developed from centuries of studying how to fight self-replicating machines. The Devourers are trying to hack our drones, reported Lieutenant Kim from the cybersecurity station. Let them, Admiral Chen replied. The hunters are designed to be hacked. The Devourer hacking attempts succeeded exactly as the humans had planned. The enemy machines infiltrated the drone control systems and began rewriting their code to turn them against their creators. What they didn't realize was that this was exactly what the humans wanted them to do. The modified code contained a hidden payload, a virus specifically designed to attack self-replicating systems. As the Devourers tried to control the human drones, the virus spread through their network, causing cascade failures in their adaptation protocols. For the first time in their existence, the Devourers began making mistakes. Enemy coordination efficiency dropping to 60%, reported the tactical officer. They're showing signs of internal system conflicts. Excellent, Admiral Chen said. Colonel Martinez, deploy the quantum destabilizers. The third wave of human weapons was something the aliens had never imagined. Instead of trying to destroy the Devourers through brute force, the quantum destabilizers attacked the fundamental bonds that held their atomic structure together. Ships that had adapted to survive antimatter explosions simply fell apart at the molecular level. This is impossible, whispered Ambassador Zekthari over the communication channel. How do you have weapons for threats you've never encountered? Because we've encountered them, Admiral Chen replied, never taking her eyes off the tactical display. Maybe not these specific machines, but we've fought rogue AIs, Grey Goo scenarios, self-replicating weapon systems, and every other technological nightmare our species could imagine. When you prepare for everything, you're ready for anything. The battle was turning into a slaughter. Every weapon the Devourers deployed, the humans had a counter for. Every adaptation they attempted, the human systems had been designed to overcome. Plasma weapons met neutron bombs. Adaptive armor encountered quantum disruptors. Hive mind coordination faced AI-directed jamming systems that turned their own networks against them. Enemy fleet down to 40% operational capacity, Torres reported. They're attempting to retreat. Negative, Admiral Chen said firmly. No survivors. No remnants. No possibility of evolution or adaptation. Dr. Patterson, deploy the cleaners. The final phase of the human assault was the most thorough. Specialized drones spread through the battlefield, seeking out every piece of Devourer technology larger than a few molecules. What they found, they consumed with their own self-replicating systems, but systems that had built-in termination codes and finite lifespans. The battle lasted exactly 18 minutes and 37 seconds. When it was over, the Devourer fleet had been completely eliminated. Not defeated, eliminated. The humans had even cleaned up the debris to prevent any possibility of the technology being recovered or rebuilt. Status report. Admiral Chen ordered. All enemy vessels destroyed, Commander Torres replied. No human casualties. Fleet integrity at 98%. Industrial platforms ready for rapid redeployment. Admiral Chen finally allowed herself to relax slightly. Around the system, her ships were already beginning to pack up their temporary installations, preparing to hunt down any other Devourer forces that might exist elsewhere in the galaxy. Admiral, came Zekthari's stunned voice over the communication system. How is this possible? The threat that destroyed 12 civilizations. You eliminated it in less than 20 minutes. Admiral Chen turned toward the communication station, her expression serious. Ambassador, what you just witnessed was not magic or superior technology. It was preparation. For the past 300 years, humanity has been getting ready for the day when something would try to make us extinct. We've planned for every possible threat, developed counters for every conceivable weapon, and prepared responses for enemies we hoped we'd never meet. She paused, looking out at the now peaceful system where moments before the greatest threat in galactic history had been completely. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council had never been so quiet. Even the constant hum of translation devices seemed muted as hundreds of alien representatives sat in stunned silence, listening to Admiral Chen deliver her after-action report from the podium at the center of the chamber. The Devourer threat has been completely eliminated, she said in the same calm, professional tone she might use to report on a routine training exercise. Our hunter-killer squadrons tracked down and destroyed 17 additional fleets across 12 star systems. Total engagement time for all operations was approximately 14 hours. The holographic displays above the hall showed system after system that had been cleared of the machine plague that had terrorized the galaxy for nearly a year. Where once there had been writhing masses of adaptive technology, now there was only empty space and the occasional patrol of human vessels ensuring that nothing had been missed. Ambassador Zekthari was the first to find her voice, her crystalline form flickering with patterns that the translation computers couldn't quite identify. Admiral Chen, what you describe is, we lost 12 entire civilizations to this threat. Our combined fleets couldn't even slow them down. How did we make it look easy? Admiral Chen finished. She gestured, and the display changed to show a timeline stretching back over 3 centuries. Because for us it was easy. This exact scenario has been designated as Existential Threat Category 7 in our military doctrine since the year 2157. Every officer in my fleet has trained against it. Every weapon system was designed to counter it. Every tactic was tested in simulation thousands of times. The Altarian delegate leaned forward in his seat, his blue skin pale with shock. You're saying you've been preparing for this specific enemy for 300 years? Not this specific enemy, Admiral Chen corrected. This type of enemy. Self-replicating technology that adapts and evolves. We call them Grey Goose scenarios, and they represent one of 47 distinct categories of existential threat that we maintain active countermeasures for. A ripple of disbelief ran through the assembled representatives. The Quellian defense minister clicked his mandibles in agitation. 47 categories? What other threats could there possibly be? Admiral Chen consulted her tablet briefly. Rogue artificial intelligence, stellar engineering weapons, reality-manipulating entities, time-traveling aggressors, interdimensional invaders, planet-killing superorganisms, universe-consuming physics experiments. She looked up at the stunned faces around her. Should I continue? We have detailed response protocols for all of them. The ancient Thraxian speaker, whose species had witnessed the rise and fall of 3 previous galactic civilizations, spoke in a voice that carried centuries of wisdom and experience. Young human, you speak of threats that most civilizations never even imagine. How did your species develop such comprehensive paranoia? Admiral Chen's expression grew serious. Because we've seen what happens when you don't prepare for the worst. Our own history is filled with civilizations that fell because they couldn't imagine how they might be destroyed. We decided early on that imagination was the most important weapon we could develop. She gestured again, and the display showed Earth's violent history. World wars, nuclear weapons, ecological collapse, AI rebellions, and asteroid impacts. Every disaster taught us something. Every near-extinction event made us stronger. When you've survived your own weapons trying to destroy you, external threats become just another problem to solve. The Synthetic Alliance representative, a mechanical intelligence housed in a crystalline matrix, spoke with electronic precision. Your species appears to have developed military doctrine specifically designed to counter adaptive threats. This suggests extensive experience with self-improving systems. 3 AI rebellions and counting, Admiral Chen confirmed, plus 17 smaller incidents with rogue automation systems. We got very good at fighting machines that could think faster than us and adapt quicker than we could respond. General Morrison stood up from his position in the human delegation section. What the Admiral isn't mentioning is that we didn't just develop these weapons for external threats. Half of our anti-devourer arsenal was originally designed to fight our own technology, if it ever turned against us. The implications of this statement created another wave of shocked silence. A species that prepared to fight its own creations was something completely outside the experience of most galactic civilizations. There's something else you should know, Admiral Chen continued. The Devourer elimination was just the beginning. My fleet has already begun seeding defensive installations throughout Council space, automated systems that will detect and respond to similar threats before they can spread. She touched her tablet, and the display changed to show a 3-dimensional map of local galactic space. Thousands of points of light showed the locations of human-built defense platforms, monitoring stations, and rapid response bases. Any species that faces an existential threat can now activate these systems by sending a coded message to any council member. Response time will be measured in hours rather than months, The Velnaran Council representative, a younger crystal being named Kethano, finally managed to speak. You've fortified the entire local galaxy? In less than a month? Actually, Admiral Chen replied, we've been working on it since we received your first distress call. The industrial platforms we brought weren't just for fighting the Devourers. They were mobile shipyards and construction systems designed to establish permanent defensive infrastructure. General Morrison smiled at the amazed expressions around the hall. When humans commit to protecting something, we don't do it halfway. Your local space is now better defended than our own home system was 50 years ago. The ancient Thraxian speaker raised one of his massive arms for attention. Human Admiral, your species has done something unprecedented in galactic history. You have eliminated a threat that we could not, and you have done so while establishing protective systems for civilizations you had never met. Why? Admiral Chen was quiet for a long moment, considering her words carefully. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of humanity's entire history of struggle and survival. Because that's what we do, she said simply. That's what we've always done. When something threatens intelligent life, we look at it and say, not today. We've been saying not today to extinction for thousands of years. Ice ages, supervolcanoes, asteroid impacts, our own weapons, our own technology. Everything that has ever tried to end us has heard those two words. She looked around the hall at the representatives of dozens of species, most of whom were still struggling to comprehend what they had witnessed. Your civilizations achieved greatness through peace, cooperation, and advancement. That's beautiful, and it's something we deeply respect. But when that greatness is threatened by something that wants to consume it, you call us, because we're the species that specializes in making threats stop existing. Admiral Chen paused, then delivered the words that would be remembered throughout galactic history. The galaxy has a new guardian, not because we asked for the job, but because someone has to do it. And we're very, very good at what we do. As the human delegation prepared to leave, representatives from across the galaxy approached them with requests for defense consultations, training programs, and technology transfers. But Admiral Chen's final words to the council were what echoed in everyone's minds as they departed. We'll be out there, she had said, gesturing toward the vast darkness beyond the council chambers, patrolling the void between stars, watching for threats you can't imagine. Sleep well, knowing that when something tries to end your civilization, it will have to get through us first. The galaxy slept safer that night, protected by a species that had turned paranoia into an art form and preparation into a way of life. Somewhere in the dark between worlds, human ships moved through the void, carrying weapons that made Devourers look like children's toys, crewed by beings who had made themselves the universe's immune system against extinction. The age of galactic peace was over. The age of guaranteed survival had begun.